竜様。
リュウジョンです。リュウジョン。
いつ見てもいいわ。
今
ひらめいた。典型が。
I kinda don't want to do this challenge anymore. Good evening, my name is John Hub, and I'm at my wit's end. I'm challenging myself to 100% 12 Yakuza games in 12 months, and today we'll be tackling Yakuza 3. There are a lot of things to do in Yakuza 3, as you'll soon find out. In fact, if I just sat here and listed each individual thing that's required for a true 100% run of this game, we may be here all day. So instead, I'm going to go over the many highlights and lowlights of my journey. So strap in, grab a snack, and listen up, because this is going to be a long video, and all of this will be on the test. And also, the bell doesn't dismiss you, I do. Do I have what it takes to complete Yakuza 3? Will a string of bad luck or bad decisions tack on tens of hours to my run? Are all the terrible things that people say about this game true? Find out all of this and more in this thrilling installment of Year of Like a Dragon. Despite this being my fourth foray into 100%ing one of these games, Yakuza 3 is actually the oldest game that we'll be completing in Year of Like a Dragon. Originally released on the PlayStation 3 in 2009, Yakuza 3 is, no shit, the third main entry in the series. Less apparent is the fact that this is the first game in the series released in the PlayStation 3 era, with Yakuza 1 and 2 being on the PlayStation 2. As such, when it came to start remaking the games for more modern consoles, Yakuza 1 and 2 were no-brainers and got remakes in the form of Kiwami 1 and 2, while Yakuza 3 through 5 simply got remasters. Yakuza 3 Remastered, which is what I'll be playing for this run, is essentially just Yakuza 3 with slightly upscaled visuals and the ability to play the game at 60 FPS as opposed to the original's 30. Also new to the remaster is the inability to land more than one punch without an enemy putting up their guard. Seriously, this problem was so pervasive in fact that the game was given the nickname Blockuza 3, and while I do personally think it lives up to that name, there is a lot to love about this one. Okinawa is a contender for one of my favorite settings in the game. Kiryu runs a whole-ass orphanage and a good portion of the story revolves around this slice-of-life parenting subplot, and despite this being a 15-year-old game, it's still pretty visually impressive. Minus Kiryu looking kinda blocky and his suit looking a bit baggy.
Fuck you.
Oh, sorry about that. But the fact still remains that Yakuza 3 has a lot to it. This is definitely the case for completing it as well. Past 100% runs consisted of doing one thing at a time in a checklist-like fashion, but this time around, I felt like I was constantly jumping from thing to thing, like I was some sort of frog or something. But the first step is always the same. Yakuza 3's story is a mixed bag to say the very least. Okinawa is introduced as a setting for the first time in the series, and I'd say about a quarter to a third of the game takes place here. The rest takes place in Kamurocho, which is the setting of like every game in the series. To give a brief SparkNotes version of the plot, Kiryu tries in vain to be a father figure to like 9 orphans, I think, but Yakuza-related conflicts arise and demand his attention. In the final act of the story, the orphanage and Yakuza-related conflicts collide, and this evil motherfucker bulldozes the damn orphanage, so Kiryu has to beat his ass while he's trying to save Daigo Dojima at the same time, leading to a satisfying resolution for both plotlines. Kiryu also has a cool friend named Ricky, and he lets you do this to him. Aw, Ricky, you're so cool. I hope nothing happens to you in Chapter 11. I did my full 100% playthrough on easy difficulty, as the rumors of this game being on the harder side definitely got to me. This proved to be a silly goose type blunder, however, as the only way to unlock legend difficulty to beat it for an achievement was to beat the game on hard difficulty. I'll touch more on that later in this video. In past games, I'd beeline the story and then do everything else afterwards, but my game plan this time around consisted of doing all the side content as I unlocked it, and I only saved a couple of things for post-game. This ultimately made the story in the game feel a lot longer than it probably was, but it also meant that I was more than strong enough to breeze through story fights. The one thing I wanted to mention that seems like a big oversight is that there's no upgrades or gear that increase how much damage Kiryu does. This causes enemy encounters and especially boss fights to take a very long time. Even heat actions, which have been able to do a full health bar's worth of damage in the past, did absolute peanuts to the bosses in Yakuza 3. In that sense, I didn't struggle on a single fight or boss battle in the game's story, but it was a struggle to get through them sometimes, if you know what I mean. But with that, I wanted to talk about something I really struggled on. For every story, you know what they say, for every story, there's subdivisions of a story. And in Yakuza 3's case, there's 119 of these. I'm pissed. Substories are quick little quirky, silly, cool quests that you can do in 30 seconds or 5 hours depending on what they entail. So the old me would have haphazardly jumped from sub-story marker to sub-story marker, skipping through the dialogue as quickly as possible and ignoring whatever's going on. There could have been a full-on murder mystery going on right in front of me and I wouldn't even know it. But the new me pays attention. And for the record, yes, there is a murder mystery that requires you to speak to like 8 different people multiple times and then piece together their testimonies and other evidence you gather, and that's all just one sub-story. Of course, not all sub-stories are created equal. Like there are 3 sub-stories devoted to teaching a dog to sit, turn around, and fetch respectively. Good boy, good boy. There's 7 different sub-stories where Kiryu is incrementally gaslit by a group of high schoolers into believing in Slender Man and shit. But then there's some really cool sub-stories in there. Like there's one where Kiryu has a heart-to-heart with a trans woman he meets at a bar, and it's surprisingly good trans representation for a game from 2009. Another sub-story is with a recurring character in most of the series called Mr. Try and Hit Me. No one really knows why he's called that, but this time around he has 2 friends named Mr. Try and Flee Me and Mr. Try and Catch Me. And you do that to them for money. And who could forget the 4-part sub-story in which Kiryu is pressured into purchasing English handbooks from a salesperson and progressively rizzes up a white woman while using his elementary English skills. But this white woman is actually a plant, and it's all just a ploy by Big Book to get Kiryu to buy more English books. And alright, these are all good and fun, haha, we love touching moments and quirky bits, but did you know that Yakuza 3 does this thing where you can only partially complete a sub-story? And if you do that, you have no way of true 100% in the game without going into New Game Plus and redoing all of the sub-stories. When you complete most sub-stories, the one you just completed will show up in the sub-story list with a little star next to it. But some sub-stories are like, a man challenges Kiryu to a game of pool or to a round of golf. If you lose the matches associated with these sub-stories, you're given the checkmark of shame. And that shit does not wash off unless you saved beforehand and you load your save to try again. I'm very fortunate to have known this before going into this game, but I gotta imagine there's at least someone that isn't able to 100% the game because of this. The most ridiculous sub-story like this is one where a drunk man challenges Kiryu to a game that's essentially just a coin toss. I won this one on my first try, but if I hadn't, oh, you don't want to know what I would do. Oh, you don't want to know what I would have done if I hadn't beat it on my first try. Also, there's sub-stories that require a certain time of day, or for you to be accompanied by Haruka or the boy Ricky, and you have to be at a specific part of the story. If you miss these, you have to do them in post-game, which I didn't know you could do, so I was stressed over these. There's Hitman missions, which are technically not listed as sub-stories in the completion log, but you do have to do all of them in order to unlock the final sub-story, so I'm counting them here. Hitman missions consist of Kiryu fighting pretty tough bosses, most of which have copy and pasted movesets from story bosses. The final sub-story has you fighting Joe Amon. You fight someone from the Amon clan every Yakuza game, and after having done a ton of side content and leveling up, this fight was cake. I just spammed Kiryu's counter move, the Tiger Drop, which was honestly the answer to 95% of these boss encounters. And that's the bulk of sub-stories in this game. If completing them wasn't the actual longest part of this run, it sure felt like it. For your efforts in completing all of these, you're rewarded with the Golden Gun, which makes any encounter you use it in a complete walk in the park. In that sense, completing every sub-story is definitely worth your while if you're going for the 100%. Before I'm done here though, there is still one sub-story I want to talk about. I want you all to close your fucking eyes and envision a horrifying reality. Imagine barely getting past the opening chapters of the game, and you've just unlocked sub-stories. You help someone out from out of town with questions they have about Tokyo. It takes less than a minute. You investigate a kidnapping and get into a fight. This takes 2 minutes. You run into a cabaret club owner. You gotta watch out for this guy. He asks if you can help manage a hostess club and train 5 different employees one at a time. This takes 5 hours from beginning to end if you're as efficient as possible. Now open your eyes. It's real. It's you imagined it and it became real. It's real. What's the matter with you? Why'd you imagine that? The chapter 3 sub-story straight to the top is exactly what I've explained. You scout out one of 5 hostesses, dress them up, give them lectures, and the bulk of the gameplay consists of walking back and forth on the main floor of the club until you're able to talk to them again, or until the shift ends. You do this, I kid you not, over 100 times between the 5 hostesses, and then you're done. There's a missable trophy as well, where you must dress a hostess up in a specific outfit and makeup combination that the game likes. If not for a guide telling me exactly what customization options to pick, there's actually no way I could have intuitively known how to do this. And by the way, there's still 10 more sub-stories I want to talk about. In addition to a sub-story about managing a cabaret club, there are 3 different clubs that Kiryu can visit to spend time with the hostesses. There are 10 hostesses in all, each with a sub-story for once you've maxed out your relationship meter with them. And it's just the repetition and unintuitive trial and error gameplay that makes these and many other sub-stories absolutely miserable. Even with a guide that gave me the most efficient food and drinks to order, and the exact right things to say and do, the Cabaret Club stuff alone still took hours to fully finish. Unless you're an absolute moron who completes Yakuza games on the internet in under a year, subscribe to John Hub, who are they truly expecting to do all of this stuff? Speaking of, there are plenty of activities and completion metrics to be done around town. You have to perform all 88 of the game's heat actions, which are special moves that you can do under specific circumstances. I hoped that since this was an older game in the series, there wouldn't be that many heat actions, but I was wrong. Some heat actions are as simple as grabbing an enemy and pressing the heavy attack button, but then you have stuff like aim at a group of enemies and press the heavy attack button while holding a bowling ball. Like, what the hell is a bowling ball, bro? What even is that? Some of these are insanely situational and require you to be in a specific location, like a park that's the only location with a loose syringe on the ground, or a bowling alley, which is a place I actually just found out about a couple seconds ago. The other heat actions and even techniques can only be obtained by training masters late into the story. Yonoshiro is the first one that you unlock, and he teaches you to use weapons with more proficiency. There's always a weapon master in every Yakuza game that re-teaches you the same abilities you learned in the last game, which is a big gamer pet peeve of mine. I'm sure he's a nice guy otherwise. Komaki is a recurring trainer who most notably teaches you the aforementioned tiger drop, you know, from the funny meme. There's Mac, who teaches you that everything is kung fu. Even a baddie from downtown Ryukyu, she can be kung fu. He also teaches you how to run good by setting up a Mrs. Puff boating course in a construction site. Finally, Minamida teaches you that gamers are the strongest people there are. You can pay to use his fully immersive VR dentist chair that teaches you to fight good. While performing every heat action was hell and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, I thought the trainers were a refreshing and fun way to introduce the many moves in Kiryu's arsenal. There are 100 locker keys to collect, 50 in Okinawa and 50 in Kamurocho. These are represented as small glowing dots and can be found on the floors, in the alleyways, and on the roofs in both of the game's cities. They love putting these in the most blend-inable locations possible. Can I get a hashtag blend-inable location in chat, please? Thank you. More often than not, even when looking up a map of the keys, you need to look up a video of someone finding the key in the location because it's pretty well hidden. You'll get the occasional key sitting by its lonesome in an obvious spot, but these are few and far between. And sometimes what you think is a locker key is actually just a worm. Each locker key opens a corresponding locker, which contains either a weapon, a recovery item, or something genuinely pretty useful, like a minigame cheat item. The most fun and engaging activity around town that this game has to offer has got to be ordering every food and drink at every restaurant in the game. This comprises a third of the activities in the in-game completion list, so before doing this, it just looks like you haven't done shit. Usually there's an upgrade or an item or a quality of life feature that lets you eat everything at the restaurant in one go, but with the exception of a few sub-story events that let you order an entire restaurant's menu, you have to order every item one by one, and if you have full health, you can't order anything. But worry not, because if you have one of those worms that I was talking about before, you can eat it to lose a small amount of health and eat one more item. So basically, it's worm, food, repeat. Alcohol is the same thing, but you just have to drink a coffee instead of eating a worm. Restaurant hopping was one of the last things I did in my whole playthrough, just because to me personally, things like this have always felt like busy work. Like the same way that YouTubers try to make it to the 10-minute mark in a video by stalling, Yakuza 3 gives you odd jobs that no person in their right mind would ever naturally do just to squeeze out an extra 4 hours of gameplay. There are a few trophies that I would also classify as busy work. Some examples being initiate 3 battles in first-person mode, which is something not a soul would ever think to do by themselves. There's one for knocking over 100 people. This requires you to run at someone and hit them head on at full speed. The game is weirdly precise about what knocks people over versus what trips them up a little. I found that ramming people from the back while running in a straight line worked best. The winner of the Busy Work Championship, however, is picking up 30 pieces of trash on Morning Glory Beach. Every time the Morning Glory map loads in, there's one object that spawns on the beach. It's either a piece of junk or a wooden box. The best strategy for this trophy is to go fishing, then quit out of the minigame immediately to quickly reload the map. If you see a piece of junk from reloading the map, pick it up. If it's a box, you go fishing again. Wash, rinse, repeat for like an hour and a half and the trophy is yours. I'm just so baffled by things like this in the Yakuza series. Was this something that I was expected to naturally do over the course of my whole playthrough? Because I don't think I've been here 30 times in general. Like every time I go to Morning Glory in the story, was I just supposed to go and pick up the trash on the beach too? Or did they want me to learn that I can go to the fishing minigame to reload the map and then do that 100 times? I really just want to get in the developers' heads and find out how they thought stuff like this was a good idea. It's not even hard, it's just time-consuming content. If we are talking about the hardest challenges in the game, and possibly some of the hardest that the series has to offer though, I'd love to talk about minigames and their respective completion challenges have always been tricky in the Yakuza series. In Yakuza 3's case, they're by far the most difficult part of completing it. I'm completing every single thing tracked within the game, as well as the trophies, but even if I was just going for the Platinum trophy, I'd still have to beat every minigame challenge in the game. Not only that, but there's a completely optional list of requests from Haruka. These are mostly busy work like going to specific restaurants a couple of times, but there are some minigame ones as well. I'd like to take this section of the video to rank all 20 minigames in Yakuza 3 from easiest to hardest, all while being inclusive of Haruka's requests when they apply. I'll also mention if there are items that can help you cheat at a specific minigame, and how useful they were in reaching the completion metric for each minigame. So without further ado, here's my list. The easiest minigame by far is Roulette. The only challenges are acquiring a certain amount of chips, and Haruka's requests of earning a couple thousand more chips than you started with in a single session. Cheat items will more than fulfill all these tasks, making it so you don't even need to play the game really. Blackjack is the same deal. You just have to pay attention to when the cheat items expire. Same challenges as Roulette as well. A super easy one. Aroma Massage is harder than doing nothing. You need to hold a balance bar as close to the top as possible without going over. And you need to get high enough scores to complete this one. You could do this in 3 minutes or less, I would say. CeeLo is a dice-based gambling game where you just need to get good numbers and avoid bad ones. The cheat items take you most of the way to the scores you need for completion, and the rest is just waiting for good luck. Chohan is the same deal, but the cheat items take you a little less far and you need to sit and play the game for just a little bit longer. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, poker is the same general idea. It's just a little higher on the list because poker is fundamentally a harder game to learn and be good at than the others, but you only have to play a little bit of it after using the cheat items. Ochokabu mechanically is very similar to Blackjack. You just need as close to a 9 as possible. You kinda just hit buttons and trade wins until you get the score that you need. There's no cheat items, but it's a simple game. I don't know if I'm overthinking Koi Koi, but I've had like a 20% win rate on this game, specifically on Yakuza 3. There's no cheat items, and the cumulative points that you need, as well as Haruka's request, just require you to play a lot of games of Koi Koi. I can still proudly say I don't really know how to play this one, but I got through it. Now we're finally on minigames that take a little bit of skill, and I'll start this part of the list off with Boxelios. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's an arcade game where you have 30 seconds to destroy the cores of as many spaceships as possible, using a ship that moves fast when you're not shooting and slow when you are shooting. Completion consists of getting to a certain level for both the minigame challenge and Haruka's request. My best strategy for this one was to move as close as possible to the next ship I had to blast, and blast in a somewhat wide range right up to it. More often than not, I'd immediately hit the core of the spaceship to get to the higher levels of this minigame.
All these side quests are just too tedious to be. It's impossible to totally complete. Yakuza 3, fuck this game, fuck its minigames. I'm throwing my PlayStation away. Yakuza's what's to blame. I'll get away and I'll speedrun up Peter Griffin me. The fun's diminishing, so I'm never finishing Yakuza 3.
UFO Catcher has 25 unique prizes to collect. It's a claw game, and it's the clunkiest version of this game I've played to date. It's time consuming and frustrating for sure, but I can't really say it's incredibly difficult. What is a bit difficult are the chases in this game, specifically the ones in the Legend difficulty and in the post-game Ultimate matches, which I'll talk about later on in this video. This one isn't listed on the minigame list, but I don't know how else I would categorize it. There aren't any completion metrics other than run away from someone or catch someone, but the hardest of the bunch still took some time. The closest thing I could compare shogi to is chess, and just like chess, it's pretty damn hard. For the completion list, you just have to win 5 matches, which you can do by completing an easy shogi puzzle 5 times in a row. However, there is a trophy for winning a match without ever moving your king, and you have to beat Haruka 3 times at the game. To circumvent any difficulty I would have experienced, I kinda cheated and downloaded a shogi app on my phone, and I turned it upside down to simulate the game and the most optimal moves I can make at a given time. Yeah, whatever, sue me. I wish that darts in Yakuza 3 was as easy as throwing darts at a board, but it's so much more than that. I found that Yakuza 3 darts were a bit jank and require a very precise flick of the right stick on my controller to get the dart to go where I wanted it to go. You need to play near perfect games to beat every level of AI for the completion metric, and to add insult to injury, one of Haruka's final requests is for you to win a game of 701 within 5 rounds, which requires you to average close to 3 bullseyes per round. I got through it relatively unscathed, but I can see many players struggling on this one. Another minigame that a ton of players struggled on that I managed to do in just over an hour was fishing. I'm sure many people will be surprised that fishing isn't in my top 5 hardest minigames. There are 8 unique fish, all found at varying distances out at sea, with the hardest being a giant tuna. The most helpful advice I was given for fishing is to hold up on the left stick as you're catching a fish, as it's the best way to alleviate tension while reeling. Mahjong, my beloved. If this were a list of which minigames I love the most, you'd be number 1 every time, girl. Jokes aside, Mahjong was pretty difficult this time around, as you need to do 2 specific things for completion. There's no Haruka request thankfully, but for the in-game completion list, you need to score 50,000 points before bonuses are applied, and for a trophy, you must win a game of Mahjong with only 1 tile concealed. For those that aren't as inclined in the game of Mahjong, you basically need to steal tiles to create every set in your hand, and then win that hand. I mentioned those that aren't inclined, and I honestly include myself in that case. There are more conditions than I thought to get a winning hand this way, and I got extremely lucky on the very last draw of this round. It just goes to show there's still so much to learn about the love of my life. Basically, baby, I could break you down. There's so many ways to love you. Got me like, oh my god, I'm so in love. I found you finally. You make me wanna say, oh, 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 oh. Oh, Mahjong. I fell in love with bowling when I seen her on the completion list. I bowled a 300 when I had to bowl 270. Alright, that's enough of that. Alright, he's done. He's done. We're in the top 3 now, and there's really a case to be made for any of these next 3 to be the hardest. But I'm going to say that the batting center takes the number 3 spot. You need 1,800 points on the easy, medium, hard, and extra hard courses. Haruka wants you to bat a 3,000 on the hard course as well, which in case you didn't know, is a big number. What's also interesting is that the extra hard course isn't really much harder than the hard course in theory, other than the fact that your aiming reticle completely disappears. I circumvented this by placing a balled up SpongeBob sticky note where the reticle should be, and the extra hard became a lot easier. I don't really think this one is possible without cheating like this. I know what you guys are thinking. Okay, pool is gonna be number 1, so number 2 is gonna be something else. I mean, John Hub has literally gone on record saying that pool is the hardest minigame in Yakuza 3. Well, take me away, officer. Get it over with. Because after some re-examination, pool is the 2nd hardest minigame in Yakuza 3. Bitch! Look, I suck at it. I will not defend my pool skill whatsoever. It took me upwards of 3 minutes to line up a shot, all the while consulting my stream chat about most things. It's really hard, but I'm gonna put it at the number 2 spot solely because you can use a ruler to line things up. The completion itself consists of beating every difficulty of CPU on rotation, 8-ball, and 9-ball. That's 12 matches in total. You also need to sync the 9-ball on your starting shot for a trophy, and Haruka wants you to hit a combination shot in 9-ball and win a 9-ball game without fouling once. It was hell, but it was nothing compared to...
It's number 1.
It's golf. The hardest minigame is golf. Firstly, you need to score a -5 on a 9-hole course. It costs thousands of yen to compete in the tournament, and if you quit, you don't get your money back. Other than looking up a video of someone else doing this, there's really no trick to making golf easier. You kinda just have to be good at golf games. Thankfully, I play a lot of Mario Golf for fun, so I was pretty confident in my abilities. That said, the fact that I am good at golfing games and still got my ass beat by this one says a lot. I got the competition done, but the real hard part was one of Haruka's last requests. She wants you to score a 1500 on the near the pin challenge. This is a challenge where you tee off 10 times on the same par 3 hole, with different wind speeds and directions each time. Scoring a 1500 means you either need to get as close to the pin as possible 10 times in a row for 150 points each, or get a hole-in-one once for 300 points, and then still a good run after that. I must have attempted this 40 to 50 times, and I only sunk the ball in the hole once, and ultimately won by getting it close to the pin 10 times. If you're a firm believer that pool or fishing are the hardest minigames in Yakuza 3, I challenge you to try scoring a 1500 on the near the pin course. So basically, I'm seething with rage.
I'm SpongeBob.
If you thought 20 tough things was a lot to do, let me put you on to a little something called 35 tough things. I'm talking ultimate matches, bitch! They're a list of tough combat encounters and situations that require creative solutions. And if that wasn't bad enough, I have to get all S ranks on these to say I truly completed Yakuza 3. And you thought you were just gonna get one numbered list out of me this video? Nope, nope. Here's the top 5 absolute hardest ultimate matches. Number 5 is Challenge Match 4. You have to do a specific sequence of actions that kids call out. At one point, they call out, use your Komaki cat-like reflexes move. And I'm just gonna level with y'all, I don't think they know what that means. I sure didn't at first. If that wasn't hard enough, you have to do all of this in under a minute for the S rank. At number 4 is Team Match 1, and it consists of doing a 2-on-2 fight with Date against Rikia and Mikio. Date provides little to no help, and the S rank is fully dependent on beating this one in 2 minutes or less. Yakuza 3 enemies famously don't let you get more than one punch in before blocking, and Kiryu famously does millimeters to enemy health bars even when he does land hits, so I had to kick chairs at these two to get anything done. Team Match 4 is number 3. It has you fighting the last 2 bosses of the story with Majima. This one gives you access to Kiryu's full moveset unlike the last one, but you or Majima can get chunked for like a quarter of your health if you're not careful. Number 2 is Challenge Match 9, Chase Ultimate Mac. I don't know why he changed his name to Ultimate Mac, but I fuck with him nonetheless. For the S rank, you need to hit Mac 5 times in 1 minute. I was able to cheese a hit after I hopped over this car, which secured the dub right on time. Number 1 is undoubtedly Ultimate Match 5. You have your full moveset, but you need to fight every single boss with only a bit of health regen between each fight. The S rank is given for just beating this one, but it was very stressful. Especially Komaki, who is so fast I don't know how else to beat him other than by tiger dropping or using weapons. While I finished every single ultimate match, the tough combat encounters aren't quite over yet for me. What made my story run a walk in the park was ultimately that I got access to most of Kiryu's combat abilities early, then I obtained the War God Amulet to use unlimited heat actions, then I got the Golden Gun, which means I can do insane damage without even walking near an enemy. The spike in damage from getting the War God Amulet and Golden Gun is so massive that you really notice it when it's gone. The Colosseum posits the question, what if we took away everything that makes combat bearable in Yakuza 3? No items, just pure skills that you picked up along the way. There are 2 types of Colosseum battles. The first is solo battles, which are one-on-ones that you unlock by winning harder and harder tournaments. The other is tag battles, which are 2-on-2 fights where you work with an ally that you meet in a random location by beating them in a one-on-one fight. There are 50 unique solo enemies and 20 unique tag teams that you can encounter. Every tournament that you enter gives a list of potential foes that you may see, but oftentimes don't. This created a weird situation where I found myself running the same tournaments upwards of 10 times trying to find a single enemy I haven't fought yet. I also got this really unique glitch that I could only solve using a GameFAQs forum from 2010, where I couldn't find 2 specific solo opponents. One could only be unlocked by beating another random opponent in a specific tournament. This enemy shows up in a couple different tournaments, and I guess I only beat him in a tournament that wasn't the one I had to beat him in. And then by beating the guy I unlocked by beating the other guy, I unlocked the third guy. Confusing shit, but all you gotta know is Colosseum sucks. There's also the issue where opponents are just an absolute slog to fight. Insanely big health bars, unpredictable or non-existent attack patterns, making it impossible to tiger drop, which is really the only way to do meaningful damage. Heat generates at a snail's pace, and even when you do get to have a quick heat action as a treat, it barely does anything. Some enemies were just straight up hard to fight too. And for the record, the nickname Yakuza 3 never felt more accurate than in the Coliseum in this game. You really get to see the flaws in the combat system firsthand here. Since we're on the topic of flaws, let's talk about the crafting system for a second. Going into completing this game, I knew that it had a pretty annoying crafting system. Basically how it works is you obtain blueprints for different recipes, go over to Kamiyama Works in either Kamurocho or Okinawa, and he'll tell you what blueprints he can craft for you. Each recipe requires a component weapon and 2 accompanying materials. Now, one of the biggest ways they could have messed this up and drawn this mechanic out for hours is to have you haul weapons and materials in your 20 inventory slots and only be able to create like 3 or 4 recipes out of the total 76 recipes there are in the game. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that when you go to Kamiyama to craft a weapon or armor, he will actually recognize that you have the necessary parts for the recipe in your storage box. Now the question is, how did they manage to mess this one up? Yeah, so you know how I said you need a core weapon or armor and 2 accompanying materials to craft anything on the crafting list? What if I told you the game doesn't tell you what weapon and crafting materials you need for a specific recipe and instead just tells you if you have it or you don't? There are like 1,000 items in this game. This would be an impossible task without a guide, I'm convinced. You can definitely parse the core item you would need to craft most of these, but the crafting materials are just the most random shit in the world. Let's take the Kamiyama police baton for example. Now you'd think that you need a blunt weapon of some sort, or maybe like a bat, or if there's a baton weapon. No, you actually need a hyper stun gun, an old suspension, and a battery to make this one. You strap some car parts onto a taser and now it's a police baton. I could probably find fault with something for each recipe, but the more egregious part is that some of the crafting materials are extremely difficult to get. Aside from parts costing hundreds of thousands of yen sometimes in my brokest playthrough of a Yakuza game yet, there are items like the platinum nail which can only be found in random encounters and you need like 7 of them. And the very last one took me 40 to 50 minutes to find alone. The worst material to find for me though was the sacred ash chunk of wood. It's a material that you need 4 of and you can only obtain it if you get exactly between 1600 and 1780 points in the extra hard batting cage minigame. For reference, you need 1800 points for the minigame completion metric, so the attempt that you win the minigame doesn't even get you the item. Also, when I was attempting this one, if I didn't get anywhere close to 1800, or I knew that I wasn't going to win, I just quit out of the minigame to try again, because unless somehow I intuitively knew that I needed 4 wood chips, I wouldn't bother going for anything but the 1800. It's time to bust out the SpongeBob sticky notes, I guess. Overall, this is just a poorly thought out mechanic. I never found myself using any of the gear I crafted either, and ended up selling it right after I made it. I'm not sure why I did that though, because I probably won't need yen for anything else now that this is done, right?
Oh my goodness!
There is one Haruka request in this game that makes building her trust meter the absolute hardest part of true 100%ing Yakuza 3. It's not going to every restaurant, it's not the insanely hard minigame challenges, it's having to farm 30 million yen just to give away. And having to grind the 30 million yen took actually forever. I had 2.5 mil when I started grinding, and it took about 30 to 40 attempts of the same post-game tournament and some gambling winnings to get the 30 mil. They also must not have thought that anybody was going to do Haruka's request, since it's a complete secret where they might show up, and even more annoying to get them to trigger in the first place. In past games, she'd yell at you where she'd want to go, and you would go there. In Yakuza 3, however, you have to know that she has a request outside of a specific restaurant or minigame area, and then wait for her to walk over to the entrance. Usually I have to go in and out of the building to reload her player model out front to get the challenge, because NPCs cannot keep up with you and will take minutes to catch up otherwise. Then she'll awkwardly pace over to the entrance and she'll say what she wants. Nearly every restaurant in the game has 2 requests each, and the minigames have anywhere from 1 to 3. Haruka's minigame challenges made already hard minigames even harder, but if you fail a request like batting a certain score for example, it's not as simple as just hitting the retry button or going back into the minigame. You have to go outside of the building, wait for her to stumble back to the entrance, and then get the same request again, and then enter into the request and make sure you have a dialogue prompt from her. Sometimes I would go out and she would say what she wanted, and then I would go back in, and then she wouldn't say that she had the request anymore. This was hell. The last thing I'll say about the requests is that a couple of them unlock at a time as you rank up your trust level with Haruka. This not only means that she may have 2 requests in a row at the same place, and sometimes she may not have the second until later, it also means that you're going to do every request in Kamurocho up to like rank A, and then you have to go to Okinawa to do all the requests that you unlock there, and then go back and forth in perpetuity, and it sucks. And your reward for doing it all is a scarf that does absolutely nothing, but it's made with love, so I can't be that mad. And lastly, and most tragically, I forgot that I have to beat the game again on hard to unlock Legend, and then on Legend for that final trophy, and then I'm done. At this point in time, I finished everything else. Sub-stories, Haruka requests, busy work trophies and challenges. All that was left was doing 2 more story playthroughs on hard and Legend difficulty. Thankfully, my prayers were answered, and I could do both of these runs on New Game Plus and Golden Gun my way through everything. Here's a sick-ass montage of the whole thing, by the way. They love each other. After a quick 8-hour victory lap, my 2 follow-up playthroughs were done, and I got the achievements to show for it and everything. Read it and weep, gamers. 50 trophies, 632 in-game completion list items, EX trust rank with Haruka, 100% completion. And I did it all in 75.2 hours. The $1 million question, would I, or anyone in their right mind, recommend that you, the viewer, 100% or even platinum this game?
Hell fucking no!
Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it sounds like I've lost my mind, but really, I'm having a great time. I'm happy. See, that's me smiling. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a subscribe, a like, a cool comment. Also wanted to thank my Patreon patrons. My Patreon link is in the description below. If you want your name in the cool credits, if you want the know-how on what I'm working on, or if you just want to give me some funny dollars, the Patreon is the best place to do it. I make about half of the posts on there free anyways, so even if you're just passing by, you're more than welcome to see some of the stuff I've got on there. I'm gonna go to sleep for a long time and then get cracking on some Yakuza 4. I will see you all next time when Year of Like a Dragon continues. Good evening!